All right, let's jump right into this explainer. When we talk about the psychology of fear, our minds usually go straight to the classic tropes, right? Haunted houses, dark, isolated woods, the paranormal. But the truth is, the most intense, stomach-dropping psychological horror usually begins in the most aggressively normal, everyday situations. And today, we're going to explore 4 different accounts where the totally mundane suddenly twists into the absolute macabre.
To really wrap our heads around true psychological tension, imagine waking up and uncovering this reality hiding right next door. She sprinkled liquid from a corpse into our yard. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a gothic fiction novel, doesn't it? But this was a real, horrifying discovery made by a family who honestly just thought they were going through a really bad streak of luck. The psychological toll of realizing that a trusted family friend is actively, secretly working against you, it's just profound.
Section 1. The Malice Next Door, the creeping curse of jealousy. Let's get right into a story that perfectly captures the creeping paranoia of a lifelong family friendship. This family had known their neighbor, we'll call her Jalissa's mom, for years. They literally took vacations together. But beneath that totally boring, everyday suburban friendship, this unseen dark torment was slowly taking root.
Just map out how this relentless curse crept into their lives over nearly a decade. For years, all of these events were just written off as everyday bad luck. In 2015, the mother gets this sudden, unexplained foot pain. Fast forward to 2019, the father's foot pain gets so bad he actually needs surgery. Then, the family faces total financial ruin as 2 of their cars inexplicably break down. Get this, the neighbor even offers to help fix one of the cars, only for it to mysteriously stall out the second it pulls back into the family's front yard. It wasn't bad luck at all. It was a calculated, methodical attack hiding right in plain sight.
So, desperate for answers, the father visits a psychic named Rocco, and the horrifying truth finally spills out. Remember that quote? Jalissa's mother had poured sticky bodily fluid from a human corpse right into their yard. Why? To invite evil spirits into their home. She literally wanted the father to step in it so his legs would rot for 9 years. This wasn't some random prank. This was deep psychological warfare fueled by sheer, unadulterated jealousy. She was trying to drive the parents crazy so she could swoop in and break up the marriage.
Now, the psychic provided some protective items, the family's finances actually bounced back, and they cut all ties with the neighbor. So, case closed, right? Well, not exactly, because the true psychological damage lingers long after the threat is gone. To this day, that father suffers from nightly nightmares that Jalissa's mom is out there plotting something new. And that brings us to the very definition of paranoia, the relentless, lingering dread that someone close to you is actively plotting your downfall. Even when the physical threat is neutralized, that kind of intimate betrayal permanently rewires your sense of safety.
Section 2. Breaching reality, when the impossible appears. So, moving away from human malice for a second, let's talk about what happens to the human brain when it's suddenly forced to process an absolute anomaly during a completely mundane moment.
Take this story of a 4th grader in Dehradun, India. Picture a lazy, totally boring summer afternoon back in 2016. She and her friend are just wandering around a lush, safe garden. Nothing to do, nowhere to be. And then, the reality breach happens. They look up and see a glowing 13 to 14-inch pure white entity. A tiny, human-like figure with fragile, worn wings. Literally, a fairy.
What's fascinating here is the sheer power of human denial. When faced with the bizarre, our brains desperately attempt to normalize it. At first, they just assume it's a large insect, right? Because that's psychological armor. But as the details become totally undeniable, logic just shatters. They scream at the exact same time. They actually start pinching each other to inflict physical pain, desperate to ground themselves back in reality. By the time they fumble to pull out a phone to capture proof, it vanishes, leaving them with this deeply haunting, impossible memory.
We see this exact same psychological breach during a college trip in Malaysia. A group of friends are enjoying this casual, utterly mundane night stroll back to their rented apartment near P. Ramlee Bridge, just smoking, talking, walking. Then, out of nowhere, rustling branches shatter the calm. Up in the trees sits a pitch-black, monkey-like creature with glowing red eyes, 4 arms, and 2 legs. That relaxing evening violently morphs into a frantic, terrifying chase to escape.
But here's where the eerie atmosphere really sets in. Locking the apartment door didn't stop the horror. The absolute sheer terror hits them the very next morning. They walk out to head to campus, and there is the exact same creature. And it drops a dead cat directly onto the hood of their specific car before vanishing again. The psychological tension just explodes right here. This thing somehow tracked their scent through a bustling, crowded city to find their exact vehicle. They weren't just spooked anymore. They realized they were being hunted.
Section 3. The threat in plain sight. Normalizing the freshman killer. Okay, we've looked at hidden curses and impossible creatures, but what happens when the real monster is sitting right across from you at the high school lunch table? Let's talk about Jonathan.
Jonathan had a seriously dark reputation. Kids ominously called him the freshman killer, and just look at how these red flags slowly escalated. Step 1, he starts making these uninvited visits to their lunch table. Step 2, he drops this incredibly creepy defense that he, quote, only hits on sophomores and up. Okay. Step 3, he starts silently lingering in random 7th period classes he wasn't even enrolled in. And how did the students react? They tried to use humor to mask their deep, churning discomfort. They laughed right in his face, literally turning his creepy nickname into a joke just to deflect their own repulsion.
Eventually, all that unsaid psychological tension physicalized into Jonathan's ever-present guitar case. He carried this thing absolutely everywhere, claiming it was for band class. Well, one day, the narrator just blurts out a nervous, dark joke, kind of mimicking a meme, saying, "He's got a gun." In an instant, the entire atmosphere of the room shifts. The air just gets sucked out. Jonathan's face darkens, and he aggressively snaps, "Shut the hell up, dude." That nervous, silly joke instantly turned into a moment of palpable, aggressive darkness.
So the students graduated, and everyone moved on with their lives. But the psychological bill for ignoring glaring red flags, it always comes due. It took 4 full months after graduation for the chilling reality of that moment to finally surface. It popped up on a school confession page along with a shared internet meme warning everyone in the community to stay away from him.
Out of pure morbid curiosity, the narrator texts a friend who was still at the school. And the response they got makes your blood run cold. Jonathan had threatened the school, and then came the follow-up text. He had a gun in his guitar bag. The narrator's stomach completely dropped. They were forced to sit with this horrifying realization that their casual, edgy high school joke was actually a deadly reality. That is true horror. Realizing you're sitting mere inches away from a mass disaster and you were just laughing it off.
Section 4. The lingering psychological toll. The weight of what if. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to acknowledge a fundamental truth about fear. The deepest, most paralyzing horror rarely comes from the event itself. It comes from the haunting aftermath of a near-miss tragedy.
I mean, just think about this incredibly fragile moment. Right after making that gun joke, the narrator actually challenged Jonathan to open the case and play a song. And Jonathan reached for the zipper. He was literally about to open it. But right at that exact precise second, the teacher called the students back to class. The sheer fragility of their survival rested entirely on that completely mundane, boring interruption.
And honestly, that is where the true terror lives, in the realization that our safety is so often just an illusion, hanging by a thread we can't even see. What if that teacher hadn't stopped him? If that bell had rung even 1 minute later, the outcome would have been catastrophic. So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as you go about your day. Think about it. How many hidden threats are you currently brushing off in your own everyday life?